All right, everybody, welcome back. This is season 2 of PIER, as you may well know. So you're either listening right now or you're watching the video afterwards, which is great. We want to thank everybody for attending season 1, and now we're kicking right off into season 2. It's pretty exciting right now, so I just want to let everybody know that the YouTube versions are going up, as well as there's an audio version, so the podcast version, which you can find on our Anchor page, which is just Homestead, or it's up on Spotify, a couple other places where you listen to podcasts, so it's pretty cool to see that happen there. I will let everybody know that we are recording the session, obviously, to go with that, so just so before we kick into things, just so you're aware. The biggest thing that I want to remind everybody, because we did take a week off in order to transition seasons, is that this whole series is just really at its heart about positivity and about what we can do as a community moving forward, the resiliency of Edmontonians, and how we work together for things. It's a big part of it is how much we push and help each other out through these major problems, as we see we're going through one currently, but we just wanted to make sure that people had a place to also talk about positive things and not always negative. So that's the bare bones of this series. But today we get to have a fun talk with Mboya Nicholson is here with us. He is Homestead's resident jazz musician, as well as a constant source of inspiration and happiness, and definitely makes our gatherings feel much more complete every time he joins us. So we're really happy to have him here today. We're going to be talking about live music, the entertainment industry, and how that's had to make huge adjustments during COVID, and basically what he's been working on, his journey as an entrepreneur in the entertainment world, as well as just sort of his general journey, which will be pretty fun to hear about. Music has had to change drastically with technology, and there have been a lot of things that people have tried to do throughout the pandemic to continue live entertainment. So we're going to talk about a few things like that, but hopefully we'll be able to get to the heart of the music. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mr. Mboya Nicholson. He is a local pedagogue. He is also a composer, jazz musician, been playing with the Edmonton Jazz Festival since 1999. He's incredibly prolific all across the world, played in several different countries, played for ambassadors, everybody. So we're very lucky to have him here today. So I will, without further ado, let you start hearing from him.
Hello. I have to change one thing though. I had been playing in the Edmonton Jazz Festival until about 99 or 98 because I went to New Orleans to study at that time. So I was in the city up until that time and then came back. But I've been a kind of a mainstay on the on that festival, like prior to and then since coming back.
For sure. Well, forgive me for my little flub there. But yeah, no, it's super exciting being a MacEwan alum and University of New Orleans alum as well.
Yeah, like back from before MacEwan's program had degrees. They would you just got a diploma, and it was only 2 years. So now it's like 4 years, and I think they have a master's program there, depending on what, what the subject is. But before they didn't even have a bachelor's. You just got a receipt. And they said, "Have a nice day." But it was beneficial. I don't really know where to begin. I guess there has been like a big change as far as the live music scene. But technology makes it surprisingly a little bit easier than you might think. Even though we're so used to like the interpersonal connection, when you're playing, but still, it's been relatively easy to adjust to what's going on now.
That's awesome. I know we've seen some musicians holding kind of like Zoom concerts, and they say normally the stage lights, they can't see everybody who's watching. So to see the gallery view of
Now they can
everyone
see
watching,
everybody.
it's pretty
And,
intense, right?
and depending on the person's personal technology that they have, you can if you have stage fright or something like that, it could be maybe a little bit. You could be a little bit more nervous, but it's more engaging because you can actually see everybody and people can comment and and give feedback, which I mean they would do it in a different way in a live situation because you can read the room and you can read the energy, but this is a more tactile way that they can say what they like or why is it's too short or could you play this or that kind of
Yeah, that's interesting because
it's interesting.
you did a stream on the Yardbird Suites Facebook page, right?
Yeah, yeah, that was fun.
I can imagine.
It
I
was,
think they have a pretty good audience for you as well because it was like this past weekend was the jazz festival, which unfortunately had to move online as well. But
yeah.
I believe we were having a conversation that you got to see some other musicians live streams who you had missed out on previously. So that's pretty interesting that it kind of opens you up to some things that maybe you did miss out on. Or if you go to a festival and there's concurrent concerts, who do you choose? Well, now you don't really have to, right?
Right, exactly. And like even the accessibility for them too, because Chick Corea is a big internationally known, widespread kind of musician. And basically, every day you can see him streaming live for free. And you can see him not just performing, but practicing.
Mm.
And he'll say, "This is what I'm working on this week." And he'll like play for an hour. Just Chick Corea playing for an hour. If this circumstance hadn't occurred, to see Chick Corea every day, you would go broke. And you just turn on your computer and there's Chick Corea with the same lighting that everybody else has when they use their phone or when they use their laptop, and it's Chick Corea. Okay. So it's an interesting change. It's
Yeah.
much more interactive,
Do you
in a different way.
do you find that it makes it a little bit more accessible for people who are maybe just starting out so that they are at that same level?
Um, in a way, yes. I'd say like it would be a given that their skills would be at a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
But provided their skills are at a certain level, it does give more of an equal playing field because everybody has access to the same technology.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I know we're very lucky at Homestead to be in the old CKUA building, so it is a little bit inspiring to just even be there to talk about music. Um, is there something specific that's maybe part of Edmonton or part of the environment that we're in at Homestead that kind of drew you or made it feel special there?
Um, well, I mean, like that was a main factor as far as like setting up shop here. We like that was one of the main factors was the old CKUA building. Although that wasn't like I realized it afterward that like the irony is, oh wait, we're in the old CKUA building. But that was kind of a strong point for me because I'd been in the building 20 years ago when I made like the first two performances that I put on myself, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I called one of DJs, and back then you could just call them and say, "Can I promote my thing on your program?" And I gave him a cassette. So that's how long ago it was. And he called me back, and on my answering machine, he was so excited that he actually cursed at me. I didn't know this guy. He's like, "Where have you been? This is, we got to get you on." So they were very accommodating and very nice. So I have positive feelings about the building. And then, you guys took it over, and that feeling maintains because of how you set up your operation. Is it's not at the expense of the tenants. It's with them in mind. Like you're thinking inclusively, or you're thinking, how can we make it beneficial to everybody involved, which is not necessarily the way other office spaces work, or other buildings work that have businesses as tenants, kind of thing. So
Oh, that's so nice.
I don't know if that really answers the question.
No, definitely. It's really great to always hear that CKUA feeling isn't gone from the building, because that's one of the reasons why everyone loves the building, right? It's got rich history. Being built in 1909 is pretty rare in Edmonton, so being able to be part of that is definitely something that everybody kind of wanted to have built in. And Vince is chiming in with that brick too, right? Exactly. Because those are probably the same ones that were there when you visited.
And the mentality of Homestead actually works the same way, because I'm not a business. I'm just an individual, and there isn't a sense of with management and with the tenants. There's not a sense of any hierarchy, as far as we make this much a year and this is what our business does, and you're down there and you're down there. It's nobody really has that mentality. It's all independent businesses and entrepreneurs trying to do something, regardless of whether you're at the starting gate or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's even more of a CKUA type feel than CKUA actually has now, because it's when you turn them on, it kind of sounds a bit more like what you'd hear on Top 40. Like there isn't as much of a variety, or I don't get the sense of, oh well, I wouldn't have just gone and found that myself, but I'm glad somebody's playing it, because I wouldn't have thought of, like, you guys still have that sort of philosophy.
Yeah, it's interesting that you don't necessarily consider yourself a business too, or like an entrepreneur, because I think that's one thing that musicians have kind of always been. You are solopreneurs. It is definitely something that is within you, and it's interesting that you kind of have that division there. Is that something that you don't necessarily feel like an entrepreneur per se? Oh, might be a little frozen. Of course, it's with my fun question, where we have him frozen for a second here. So we'll just give him a second, and then
It doesn't look down on you for that, or it doesn't treat you a different way just because you're at the starting gate.
Okay.
We frozen?
We did have a little freeze there. Apologies.
Everybody looks frozen. Uh-oh.
It's the fun part of doing something live, right?
Are we all frozen?
We were all frozen. It was a good time. For sure. We'll just give it a couple seconds here to kind of clear out, and hopefully it will give itself a second. This is the other fun thing, is normally live performances, you're used to like tech stuff going wrong, but not quite this version of tech stuff going wrong. So we'll give her a second. Let the old internet catch up to us. I know I can still see some other people at Homestead on here, so I'm not sure what's going on. The other side of that wall must make a difference, apparently.
Hello?
I can
Hello?
hear you, but it keeps freezing for him. I know, very sad face. We'll have to give him 1 second. He's just gonna leave and then come back. It's the fun part, right? This is with doing things live. Luckily, this is the first time this has happened during this series. So points there to us not having to go through any technical difficulties until now, but we'll give him a second to get back set up and ready. Unless any of you want to play piano too. No, not feeling it. We should get everybody to play piano and then it'll just like comfort the internet back in. I'm pretty sure that's what'll happen. Oh, we've got an Mboya.
Hello?
Hello.
I suddenly noticed that while I was talking, everybody had the same expression on their face and no one was blinking.
We were just that into it. That's Vince was gonna play hot cross buns for us on recorder while you were gone, apparently.
well, I'm sorry that I missed that.
Yeah, I was like, I don't have any instruments, but I have a lot of drumsticks. That's all I have around. So
That's all you need.
Would have been a little rough, but you know, we could have made it work, right? I could do hot cross buns, just tap it out while Vince plays. But yeah, welcome back. Apologies for the little fun there. Should we recheck in at a new question? I don't know where it cut off for you.
I don't know either because I was apparently talking to myself for maybe a minute before I realized that no one was moving.
For sure, so was I, so don't worry. I was just talking about how when you were describing yourself, you weren't really using like the word entrepreneur and saying that you weren't a business. But like live music, you do basically have to be a solopreneur for that. So I'm just wondering where you kind of put that division, or if that's something that just goes with the industry, or.
Oh well, I was saying that I do think of myself as an entrepreneur, but that I appreciated that Homestead doesn't like the people here don't treat you a certain way based on how far ahead you are in your pursuit of that. Like I'm at the starting gate, but it's not negated in comparison to another organization or company or another individual who's further down the line. But musicians, that being said, are notorious for not thinking of themselves as a business, which goes along with the fact that they rampantly undercharge to the point where it's really sad. Um, and it took me a while to get to a point where I would tell people things like, "I'm not charging you for time. I'm charging you for experience and for if I'm teaching for results that you're looking for, but like experience and the effort of getting to and from somewhere and all of that and equipment and et cetera, et cetera." And most musicians sort of come at what they're asking as far as what they charge in a kind of a timid way. So
Yep,
they
I've seen
don't
that.
think of themselves as entrepreneurs.
I've seen that definitely also in the art community. I know we
Yes,
had Scott, who did our mural, talk about working with illustrators and how people really maybe don't think that they should be paying as much. But you know, you've spent how long practicing, and that's something that Jobber, one of our former tenants and our old neighbor, they just moved out in May, so we no longer get to hang out with them. But that's something that they always strive as you're not paying for the time, you're paying for the experience. So the 30
exactly.
years that someone took to perfect something is what you're paying for. So I think it's very in line with what the typical entrepreneur thinks. And I definitely like thinking of musicians as entrepreneurs personally. So it's always fun to
Can
hear
you
that.
can you spread the message to them?
That's what we'd love to do. I know a few people who we definitely want to kind of talk about that a little bit more. And we had a session booked with two local artists prior to COVID, so that's definitely something that we want to bring back to this, and kind of the creativity that maybe comes out of this era might be something that is going to influence art and music and things for years. So we should be talking about that and celebrating it.
The best comment on that I saw was on social media. There was a meme, and the cat is cheaper, and it was a picture of a horse, and the back of the horse was exquisitely done, like by some crafted, skillful artist. And halfway down the horse, you get to the front, and it looked like it was done by a 4-year-old. That's cheaper. Does that make you? Does that? Are you satisfied with what you got? You got it cheaper.
Definitely. I'm a big fan of that meme. It's I've seen people use it in a couple things, like they used it for like the seasons of TV shows and things like that.
You get that
It
cheaper.
really does get the point across though that, you know, if you want excellence, you do need to put time into it. You do need to put money into it. It's, you know, you don't get somebody at a high level very easily without paying them, which is definitely something that I kind of wanted to talk about with the Yardbird stream, because I know we had talked about maybe setting up your stream and getting donations or selling tickets, because I think your trio had a concert booked, right?
Um, yeah, that was supposed to be in April, I think. And by mid-April, of course, all of this had Dorothy's house was up in the air on its way to Oz. Like the whole thing had just there was no way that live music was gonna happen. Um,
Mm-hmm. So have you thought about maybe doing um, your own live stream, or just working with Yardbird more, or?
I had thought about. I know that I have one coming up um, with a saxophonist, and I believe it's well, not believe it is through the Yardbird. I was going to say I believe it's with the festival, but the festival is closing or coming to a close. But I have one coming up with a saxophonist. I've been trying to figure out the technology as far as doing them here because I've done one or two here, but very crudely, where I don't connect it to my computer because I can't get it direct to the computer. They go through GarageBand, and I need an interface, and I just found out what that was last week. And uh, there's something called Black Hole that you need to get to distribute the sound out there or something. And I downloaded it, and it wiped out all the GarageBand sounds, so I had to take it off and then get GarageBand back up. So I just unplugged the thing and I used the actual speakers. So my laptop microphone or my phone mic which is better, was picking up the room sound,
Oh.
so that it was basically like if a caveman did a live stream, that's what it would be, like the speakers going through like the most primitive technology type thing. It's like, just hold your phone up and let me play.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
I did one or two in there.
it's about making it work, right? And that's where that resiliency comes through. So you get to try out a couple different things, and maybe next time we'll hold our phone for you. But I definitely think that's where the community aspect at Homestead can help out, because I know we have some people who are very technologically gifted, or people who can, even if it's just holding your phone for you while you play. Like, I think a lot of people would be down for that, which is pretty fun, because when we actually get to hear music in this space that isn't coming from downstairs, it's pretty fun. So that is interesting that technology can also be kind of a barrier for some people. So it's not necessarily accessible still. Because I know there's been a few of the concerts that are by these massive artists, and they're all trying to put out
Yeah.
this like "Let's Feel Good" campaign. But I found that a lot of those aren't quite hitting home, and I found myself watching more like Canadian content and local content through this, not like Pharrell and massive people like that.
Some of them maybe have so much access to the big type of technology that they always work with, that maybe there's a bit of a disconnect between their audience and them. I don't know if that, well, maybe that's not true. I don't know. I guess it depends on how they use it, because if it's still not interactive, if it just looks like they're continuing their brand, or they're like me and download this and do, like, if they're not engaging in some way, like Wynton Marsalis has something on Mondays and Wednesdays where he talks directly to the audience, and he might play, and an assistant of his at Jazz and Lincoln Center asks questions, and it's very interactive. He's not trying to sell you anything, and he's not always saying, I mean, musicians have to make a living, and they do say, like, donate here if you can, and this, like, that's natural, but it's not like, hi, so I like my thing, and go over here, and I'm at Twitter and this, and I'm like, I was watching something on social media, um, trying to find something, and something popped up, and this woman said, hi, it's so and so, you can like me on Facebook, you can do this, you do this. And after a couple of seconds, I thought to myself, I don't know who you are, and you haven't told me what exactly it is you do and why I should care. But I'm supposed to go here and like you, and then go here and join you, and go here and go here and go. And I think some of them, even like the celebrities, some of them treat the pandemic like it's nothing but a vehicle to do that. So maybe it's a bit dry for the people listening or watching.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we saw a pretty big example with those singing videos that
Oh,
got put out. Not exactly hitting the mark there. I think now that we've had this time, like you're saying, you've watched this like complete artist that you get to watch him every day if you want. And it's opening up the
and he's like, please
process.
come back tomorrow.
Yeah, because like you miss people too, right? Like being able to play for a live crowd is a feeling that is hard to replicate. And
Right.
being around that energy, like you talked about being able to read the room, is it something that like you're really missing and kind of craving?
It In a way, yes. Although you always internally have that, because you can kind of gauge if you're making things go too slowly, or it's like if you're in a conversation at a party and you can sort of tell if you're dragging down the energy, unless you're really not self-aware and all, and you just keep going, or maybe you had too much to drink and it's like, I'm just the most wonderful person at this, and the people are always. But it's the same way with music. Even if you're not in front of a live audience, you still have that gauge that tells you that, okay, it's dragging. We need to end it and go on to something else.
Ooh, that's really interesting. Yeah. The only performing that I've done is things like this, or when they forced us into little musicals when I went to Vic growing up, which you're also an alum of, right?
Yay!
Right? It's a pretty fun thing. Mboya and I are both alumni from two places. So Victoria School, I believe it was still Victoria Composite
Yes.
for you, and then they renamed it, and then they renamed it again. But
the Victoria School. They named it. They renamed it again. They renamed it.
When I went there, it was Victoria School of the Performing and Visual Arts, and now it is just Victoria School of the Arts.
Oh well.
A little long.
Well, excuse me. I'm gonna have to drink my tea with my pinky up now.
Oh, definitely. We had a lot of fun. It's an interesting one. I was more involved in the computer side of things. I wasn't so much in the band program, but I know, like, you probably know of I forget his first name, but there's two of him because he's a twin. Dr. Brennan. Did you ever play? He had like he's a trombonist, I believe.
Craig Brennan?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So like, it's fun because there's like this music scene in Edmonton that people know about, but they don't quite know that they all know each other.
Well, I was in the music department and the theater department, so I was basically on that side of the building back when the whole building was high school, before they changed it around, which I guess in a way is smart on their side, because they would be grooming kids from the beginning for understanding the arts, and then when you get to high school age, you're ready for that kind of thing. I guess that was the impetus for them doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I know I started elementary at a different school, and then to have access to like the Evo Howard Theater, to have access to a crazy amount of instruments that I
fourth largest theater in Alberta. They drilled that into us every damn day.
It is a very cool theater, though.
It is.
It does give you that feeling when you stand on that stage. So I think that's kind of what we were talking about with the feeling that there is behind performing. And Vince has actually asked if we could have Mboya Mondays. So I think that's something.
I saw that. That's why I started laughing while you were talking, but I wasn't laughing at your comment.
So I'm not funny then. Just clarifying.
No, you were saying something serious, but I wasn't laughing at it.
Fair enough. Thank you. Yeah. So I think that's something that maybe we can even consider, and like being able to share your music with people would be really great. Heidi is also a big fan. I know we've been trying to get you to play for quite a while, right? So if we can facilitate that, I think it could be something really fun. Cool little project.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on time too, because like I just recently got a grant to write something, so I'm basically invested in doing that right now. But you're gonna wind up hearing strains of it anyway, because my laptop is out of commission for the moment. So any writing I do is like without headphones. Well, I mean, I'd still have headphones, but the access to the keys with the cord sometimes makes it cumbersome. So I just unplug it and use the speakers if but low enough so that it doesn't disturb anybody. But
Yeah, we were just talking about that. This was kind of my segue because we wanted to say congratulations for the grant.
hey,
That's super exciting. I know you were working pretty hard on writing some grant applications, and it's awesome when it comes through like that.
they're awfully vague at letting you know that you got the grant. They you've been recommended for acceptance for the grant, and then in the next paragraph they tell you in a few days we will give you directions on how to accept the grant. So I've got. Why don't you just say you got it? Why you be so indecisive? Because we're the government, and that's what we do. Oh,
I think
makes
Heidi
sense.
definitely feels you there. Maybe written a couple grants, maybe. But
maybe Heidi's written a few.
maybe. But no, it's super exciting when stuff like that comes through, and I think the more that we can do to support you throughout that journey, even if it's just like, hey, what does this mean when they send me an email saying you have been recommended to accept a
Recommended
grant?
for acceptance.
Yep. It's very interesting how certain industries work too, right? Because in some, like, grants widely available. In others, they're like, there's one and it's for every single musician in the country.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting when you actually get to go through that process and see what's available to you.
And you're like, oh, it works. Okay. Because that kind of it opens you up to more opportunities or potential opportunities. Or well, this actually does work. I could do it again. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so exciting because I know you've been writing a lot more lately, is what you've been saying, and rather than focusing so much on the performing, because I know you were writing music for a play, right?
Yes. And actually, one of those, I think, um, I've got to talk to the playwright again because that's still ongoing. A more recent one, the grant for that didn't go through, so that one's not being done. But a conductor who and like things pop up, and then you just kind of run with them because a conductor who I knew in Toronto has an idea for a grant that has more to do with accessibility of tech or technology making things like the arts accessible to the public. So the grant requirements are not necessarily your artistic merit, but how you're using the technology. So it's another project that I'm working with him on that has to do with um, putting music out there. So it's another opportunity to get paid for disseminating music.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think a lot of people look at musicians and say, okay, so they make their money from performing, right? But there's so much more to it. And you also being a teacher is something that has been interesting through this situation, I can imagine as well.
Oh yeah, like I've done have done
It's a little leggy
lighting with
again.
uh, like Jet Street. There's runs. Actually, I just saw that you you, you stopped. It's moving there. Is it? Is can you see me?
I can see you again. I think it may
How
be
many fingers am I?
if you're holding M fingers, it is lagged. That's for sure.
Oh,
I think your video is trying to catch up with your voice. Oh, there we go. It was 10. So it gave you all your voice came, but none of the video. So we were
Oh,
like,
okay.
okay. But no, it's pretty fun to
So I looked like a movie on Channel 12 that was dubbed.
a little bit.
Okay.
It definitely was up there, and we just look like frozen and excited by whatever you're about to say. But apologies. Feel free to go
That's
back
okay.
to talking about your teaching.
Oh yeah, like a friend of mine runs the Sugar Swing Ballroom
Okay.
on White Avenue, and I was trying to figure out a way that I could do. I do these jazz history lectures, but they lack something if you don't have the audio. If you can't show examples of the recordings that you're talking about. And he said, "Why don't you come and use my space because I have a license because he has to do that for his classes, and he broadcasts them from SOCAN to be able to do it. So problem solved. So I play whatever I play, and the license covers that.
Hmm, that's awesome. I know that can kind of be a
So
tricky
some
thing
people
to deal with.
have yeah, and people think that it's legal to use as long as they say into infringement, but that doesn't really do anything. Bankruptcy. Legally, that doesn't do anything. I declare bankruptcy. Okay. You're not a lawyer, are you? No. It's like
Well, on the internet, everybody is a lawyer, so that is one of the unfortunate things when it comes to dealing with legality of music, right? Because if you're not playing original works, you do have to pay license fees for things.
everybody's a lawyer. Everybody. Yes. Very true. So that he helped me out with that. I have another one on Saturday that I'm doing.
Oh, awesome. You should definitely send, like, whenever you're doing anything, 100% you can send it to me. I'll blast it wherever it needs to go. Because
Sure.
the jazz history sounds very, very exciting. Like, do you go into like um, specific composers, or is it like broad strokes? What kind of?
Well, specific musicians and specific composers. Like it's all on Saturdays, and the previous Saturday and the Saturday before that were both Louis Armstrong because he was so seminal in the music and in and he's not really in today's pop culture for that. He's people sort of know him really as the guy who sang "What a Wonderful World," and he smiled a lot, and then he got old and he died. And like that's the narrative. Like, oh, what a wonderful world, and that's it was responsible for. He basically he was the template. Like that lecture was called "The Architect of the Archetype" because he was the one who set down the kind of the format that's still used now. And it took 2 days to do that, and there's a lot of stuff I left out. So
Interesting. Yeah, I think specifically jazz, I feel does not get the same sort of attention that people want to watch the Katy Perry biopic. Like it's it's a little bit more of a lost genre, even though jazz influences pretty much every other genre.
yeah, it's pretty much it's a niche that is it'll never be en masse kind of appreciated Like, why? Because even at the time when it was as close as it could come to being pop music, it still was not totally accepted by the masses as pop music. Like, pop music had attributes that were similar to jazz. So it sounds like all pop music back then was jazz, but not really. There were certain things. So if you went down a certain corner or avenue, people would say, "Oh well, I don't really want to hear that. I want to hear this instead." But
Interesting.
it was for about 10 years. It was a big kind of pop thing.
I know it kind of got the bad press, right? People thought it was for people who like drank and smoked at clubs, and
Yeah,
the Chicago vibe of things, right?
yeah. They confused the aesthetics around it, for which it had no control, with it.
Very interesting, because I know you going to school in New Orleans, like that must have been pretty inspiring all the time.
Oh, that was fun, and it was awe-inspiring too. Like, even small things, like the lady who ran the concession stand in the dorms. You go up every day and you get your coffee or you get juice or whatever, and you talk to her, and then one day, after you know her for like 3 years or so, all of a sudden one day she says, "Yeah, I'm like third cousin to Billie Holiday."
Just casual.
Okay. And you talk to somebody else, and a classmate of mine who was a saxophone player, I didn't find out until a few years after I left New Orleans. I was a musician, and he's also a teacher, and he's in a big band right now. But one day his father died, and his father was a man named Doc Pollin. And I remember as a kid leafing through jazz books and seeing this picture of Doc Pollin, and I knew that Doc Pollin played with Louis Armstrong, and I was friends with Doc Pollin's son, and had no idea that that he was Doc Pollin's son. And lo and behold, his siblings are all musicians. But it's not something that they boast about or talk about. It's just because music is so prevalent there that it's just another way of expression. And I know that I didn't know it at the time, because if I did, I would have bugged him to like tell me everything. Like, wait, your father do such and such.
For sure.
So,
Yeah, no, it's that's super cool that like it's such a connected city, and I think that's where we can kind of talk about where Edmonton is going with our music industry, and how, what in your opinion, what do you think is like the next step for Edmontonians now that we've lost our in-person concerts for now?
well, I think that it's going to cause us to, and has started to cause us to, prioritize the interpersonal aspect of the arts, of music, of everything. I, we can't take for granted anymore. And the way that internet has made it possible for musicians and artists who maybe before wouldn't be able to work the same way, or wouldn't be as accessible to numbers of people that are greater because of the global reach that they have now. that also is a benefit. Like business wise, the city sometimes can sort of operate from a mindset like it's a small town. And I mean, it can't culturally we can't do that. We have to be broad-minded enough to look at the world as the horizon and look at businesses in the city as more than just I'm over here and you're over here and I'm over here and you're over here. Like we've got to be more inclusive and more engaging. And ironically, I think the absence of engagement will make us and has started to make us more preoccupied with that engagement, like trying to find it in a different way, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, that definitely does. That's a great way of putting it. I really like that. It's kind of the whole point, right? Is throughout this, we've had people on in the first season talking about how they want to support local businesses, and half of them I hadn't heard of before the pandemic, and now they're like my favorite places to go.
To go right. Yeah, it and it helps them too because maybe they didn't have the the acumen for promotion that would have given them a wider reach or more of a profile. But now, out of necessity, we're looking for places, and they're looking like it's more the technology really helped in that regard.
Oh, definitely. Technology kind of controls everything that we do, even when it craps out on us. But it's definitely been great chatting with you today. I just want to thank you so much for giving the perspective from the arts for us, because it is something that doesn't get shouted out quite enough.
Thanks. I think that we need to put more of a priority on it and more of a feeling of like there are benefits that we can't see, and it's hard for some um, factions of government and for uh, maybe people who are more used to instant gratification and a more tactile result of something quickly to really understand that the arts benefit everybody, especially in a time like this. It's more than just Mozart makes you better at studying or music helps you with math and all these little superficial things that desperate music teachers use to get clients because it's a shorter, more effective soundbite than explaining the broad way that music works intangibly to help society. Like it's more than just A plus B equals this result, so use music for that. And I think if we can get our society like, and if musicians think of themselves as entrepreneurs and use that kind of philosophy to sort of drive that 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 mantra that we need the arts and we need music, it'll be stronger than just sort of sitting back kind of in that timid way that I was talking about, because that's not effective. It hasn't been effective. I went in two different directions there.
Oh no, right. All in the end, it felt
Yeah.
felt right. Don't worry. It's like Kirsten's saying, the intangible benefits of arts are something that
Mm-hmm.
you can't really put, a specific price on things. So we know, like, okay, so the Oilers aren't running, we're losing this much in tourism, this much in restaurant, this much, this much, this much. You can put an actual price to that, but not running, say, something like the Fringe or any of the festivals, like the jazz festival as well. You can't really put a price on how that affects a person.
Right. Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
I think that's where maybe we need to start making some more noise for the musicians of our city and kind of bringing you all together. So I think I really, really appreciate you coming and sharing that with us, and maybe musicians focusing more on, if I thought of myself as an entrepreneur, how would I be approaching this?
And putting it in the schools too, and making it accessible that way. Because I, I don't need someone to tell me that, for example, I mean, people when there was a time when people would talk about Beethoven. This movie came out, Immortal Beloved, a long time ago, and the movie was based on these love affairs that Beethoven had, and the tension between the women and the tension between Beethoven and all of this. And that was the crux of the story, because they had to think of a reason for people to go see this movie. Was not about music. But I knew Beethoven was serious when I was 12, because I had to play those pieces and I had to sweat through them, and like, so it gives you a different perspective. And if we could give kids a different perspective by putting them in front of the music, like putting them in front of the music of Duke Ellington, putting them in front of the music of Beethoven, putting them in front of the music of people who made timeless things that are not necessarily put on in focus with current pop culture. If they can internalize the importance of something and see about the difficulty of it and the timelessness of it, and get their own appreciation and importance of it, like through playing. That's another thing too. Like if we put more music in the schools, that helps as well.
I definitely agree with you there. But I just want to thank you again for being here with us. We really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure Homestead members who will be sharing this with the Edmonton community, or anybody who really wants to hear about music as a business, will definitely be interested in everything that you have to say. So I definitely appreciate you being here with us today. We will be back next week with Jacqueline and Hunter Cardinal from Naheoan. So we're going to be talking about a little bit of a different thing next week, but every Thursday we're going to be having either Homestead members or Homestead alum or Homestead connected members coming to talk with us and talk about how we can get through everything and why Edmonton is the best place to be for right now. So thank you again for being with us, Mboya, and we'll see everybody next week.